Standard 1/2 inch water selector. You do have other size water selectors. This would be in a 3/4 inch. You do have all the way up to the 1 inch. All the same issues apply. You'll have a stainless steel machined block that you're probably never going to have to replace unless it's completely damaged or you mess up the threads getting the old parts out. You have a $195 shaft that is also replaceable. If you notice, the shaft has a marking nut on there, and I'll get to that in a little while. You have two compression fittings. Basically, they're threaded, and they thread into the bottom of your gland nut. The gland nut are all the brass pieces here. So you want to thread this into the brass part ×2. Do not cross thread that. It's easy to do. It's brass, it's plastic. You'll mess it up very easily. Now, in a perfect world, come zoom into this. In a perfect world, the shuttlecock, the brass shuttlecock, is rounded and it has a home to stop in a perfect world. All right, once we're moved on to these parts right here, you've got 2-part O-ring. It looks just like this. You have a static ring, or a backup ring if you will, which is blue, and a small little 3/8 O-ring. You have a shaft, you have a flat plastic ring, and you have a gland nut that looks similar to these JIC gland nuts, but they are not a JIC. If you notice, it's flat. So the first thing you want to do is to just rest this on there. You find a flat space to put this on, and you do an easy push down while you're twisting, and it lines up perfectly. You want to slide your flat plastic ring over your shaft, slide your gland nut over your shaft, and you should have no spacing in between there at all. Now it's time to move on to your water manifold block. Keep in mind, those two, are they 5/16 holes, 8mm holes? They are for the mounting of that. This accepts the water in from your water manifold block or your plumbing, and this is where your gland nut JIC fittings go, and your handle goes here. So we're going to proceed. You want to do all of this by hand first until you get everything tightened down and nice. So you want to put your first gland nut in. You want to go ahead and slide your shuttlecock in with the opening facing you so you can grab it easily. Go ahead and put in your other brass gland nut. At that point in time, like I said, you want to do everything by hand where you can expose the opening of the shuttlecock. That's when you line in your handle. Go ahead and thread that in easily with your hand. No grease needed, no thread tape needed. In fact, if you thread tape this, you're going to mess up the seal. So the first rule of thumb is you have a knot on your handle on the shaft, and that is where the back of your handle goes. You always want, when your water, if you have a manual jetter with a when you have a non-remote unit, you're going to have a long handle on here. This is going to face the outside of your jetter. Keep in mind, if you have this connected on a JMS system or one of our Gen 2 units, this water selector is going to be flipped 360 degrees. There's going to be a smaller handle on there. The functions will run backwards. You won't have to worry about that right now. So you want to tighten this down. The good rule of thumb with this is where your water comes in, your knot for your shaft should face the back. So right now I have it a little backwards. You just want to loosen up your gland nut like so, and get it to where the hole is lined up with the water inlet hole. You can use your handle, you can use a small wrench, but if you notice how I'm just wiggling the shaft and spinning the gland nut, it's actually tightening down, not throwing me off of my setting. You just want to continue doing this until you get everything hand tight. Once you have everything hand tight, you want to inspect that you have the hole facing the rear where the water comes in. At that point in time, you want to grab your handle or your shaft and you want to check your work. A good rule of thumb is if you have an air compressor nearby, you can introduce air into your water selector. Let me grab a handle really fast. If you have a handle, the handle is going to go on with the small hole facing the water inlet. Your handle is going to go on like this. If you have a remote system or this is tied to an actuator, you won't have this long handle. You'll have a 2 or 3 inch handle, and it will be completely backwards. Right now we are rebuilding a water selector manually, so this is how you want to look. To check your work, you have 2 options. You can introduce this back into the machine and introduce water in there. Before you put on your 1 inch crossover hose and your 1 inch water return hose, you can simply crank up your jetter standing back. When the water selector handle is down, you should only have water shooting out of the bottom, none out of the top, and vice versa. When your handle is up in high pressure, you should have water only coming out of the top gland nut and not out of the bottom. If you find it backwards, it's really easy to correct. All you need to do is lay your water selector down, back off of your gland nut, and back off all the way to where you can completely spin your handle around and then retighten your gland nut. Very easy to get backwards, and it's very easy to correct. I've been here 6 years and I still do it myself. So once you've tightened it down, I will show you the quickest way to test it with air or with water or with a simple screwdriver. If your handle is incorrectly and you've done everything correctly, if you pay attention and just set a screwdriver into the top of the gland nut, when your water selector handle is down, your screwdriver should push up, hence letting the water come to the bottom. If you notice that screwdriver moving just a little bit, the screwdriver should be dropping down when your handle's up, and it should go up when you're down. Just like this. You can introduce air into here. You can also blow into here. You can introduce water into there. All right, once you have everything tightened down on your water selector and you're 100% confident that the water is going to do exactly what you want it to do when you want it to do it versus being backwards, you want to secure it in a vise. Obviously, there's a couple points on there that you don't want to squeeze, like the shaft. You don't want to damage the threads on that nut. And now at this point in time, you just want to tighten everything snug, because earlier we did everything by hand. Keep in mind your handle has a 10mm nylon lock nut with a small flat washer. That washer is very important. If you forget the washer, you're going to screw the nut right onto the shaft and it's going to over tighten it. So now at this point in time, you're tight. Now when you put it on your machine, you want to thread tape, you want to re-thread tape the JIC fitting that accepts the water. Always thread tape the metal into metal. Brass into metal, you don't have to worry about it. So if you put this on the machine and you notice that you have a small drip out of here, just tighten it down a little bit more. Keep in mind, never add thread tape or any type of lubricant from brass to metal. You're going to mess up the seal. That's your water selector.